Good evening, everybody. I'm Victoria Cooper, and I've prepared a talk on Ceres in the natal, progressed, and solar arc charts. First of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to what Ceres is, a discovery chart, and how she plays out in our lives, in all our lives. So I am going to be reading, but I will be looking up at the screen from time to time. So Ceres is the Greek name for Demeter, the mother. She lends her name to what we call cereals, which form the bread we know as the staff of life, which is how we feed ourselves to sustain our life force. She was discovered on 1st of January, 1801 at 8 p.m. Her discovery chart finds her exactly conjunct Algol, Medusa's head, which at that point was located at 23 degrees Taurus. She's a fearsome mother, protective of her progeny, the kind you do not cross. Saturn lies on the ascendant of this chart and lies at the far midpoint of Pluto and Venus, with Ceres square both near and far midpoints, revealing the key themes of abundance, austerity, and Plutonian themes of death, abandonment, trauma, abduction, control, resurrection. Pluto in this chart lies on the royal star Fomalhaut in Pisces, giving the enduring name for this theme, echoed by the icy falling in Scorpio with Neptune close by and Neptune-Pluto in mutual reception. Pluto in 7th house also is apex a yod, comprising Uranus at one leg and Jupiter-Moon in 12th at the other. So we get a picture of everlasting life through regeneration, mothering, death, shock, with which we must form some kind of relationship, Pluto being in the 7th in that chart. Astronomers consider that at that one point, she was one with Pluto. They are united of the same matter, although they've travelled far from each other. She's located in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. In 2006, Ceres was promoted to dwarf planet, whilst Pluto was demoted. So their fortunes appear to be connected as much as their origin, and they both give a strong flavour of the Wheel of Fortune, going up, going down, an enduring theme with both of these heavenly bodies. Mythologically, Ceres was the sister of Zeus or Jupiter, daughter of Saturn. So even in her progenesis, we see her dual nature, born of austerity and consonant with plenty. Astronomically, Ceres has an orbit of 4.6 years around the Earth. Each year, therefore, she traverses just under one quadrant of our charts. Each 2.3 years, she's therefore above the horizon or below the horizon, just like her daughter Proserpina, Greek Persephone, who was seen by Pluto, who became obsessed with her, opened up the earth, actually in some stories a volcano, and rode out with his chariot with black horses to capture her whilst she was out picking poppies, abducted her into hell, and raped her. Prior to that, Ceres and Proserpina were so fond of each other that any suitors for Proserpina were rejected. Neither of them wished for separation, so Pluto's actions directly confronted their worst fears, gave them their worst nightmare. Ceres searched for her daughter after the abduction, but failed to find her, during which time growth of all plants and creatures was threatened by her neglect whilst she was so depressed, and the earth was heading for destruction. Ultimately, she turned to Zeus for help. The nymphs who were with Proserpina at the time of abduction were turned into sirens, and Zeus brokered a deal to enable Proserpina to return to her mother. Meanwhile, Proserpina had found love with her abductor and married him. This indicates an element of the Stockholm syndrome, where one begins to love one's captor, a survival response resulting from trauma overload. Pluto was clever and tricked Proserpina into eating half a pomegranate full of seeds, which is a symbol of fertility in some cultures, echoing her own heritage from her very fertile mother, so that she could never fully leave Hades or hell, despite Zeus's intervention. The 50% forms a large part of the Ceres story. When Proserpina returns to the world from hell, Ceres' joy is returned and everything grows, and thus we have our seasons according to the myth. When Proserpina is in hell, everything dies. When she's on Earth, everything grows and lives and is abundant. So 50% here, 50% there, 50% this, 50% that. There's an overriding theme of duality with Ceres. Anyway, just to carry on, the myth lays out the sense of disconnection Ceres felt. In this sense, it is a description of our own strayed path from the divine and the story of our return to that same divinity. Our souls have a sojourn in the dark before germinating back into the realms of light, and prior to that, our arrangements and struggles with conditions found in the darkness. That duality shows us dichotomies of dark light, depression and joy, decay prior to germination and growth, bounty and austerity, infertility and childbirth, life and death, hell and heaven, attention and neglect, grief, trauma, healing, loss and finding, compromise and power, theft and restoration, unemployment and fulfillment, starvation and nourishment, including issues of eating disorders, child abuse and nurturing, apathy and action, environmental extinctions and flourishing, confinement and liberation, control and cooperation, travel and return, downturns in our lives, coercion and self-determination, burial and resurfacing, abandonment and rescue, as well as mediumship, issues of resurrection and reincarnation, child custody battles, separation anxiety, and going beyond boundaries. When she exerts her power to achieve compromise, everything restores and becomes abundant. The kinship with Jupiter shows here. When she refuses to negotiate, everything dies, including part of herself. The kinship with Pluto shows here. Interestingly, her daughter dies in hell, but communication continues and she is restored to life. The cycles of life are eternal and death can be overcome. The deep feminine is the wisdom that sees death and desolation, but knowing the fullness of the life cycle, renews strength, takes charge, takes action, and ultimately gives birth to new conditions. And the deep feminine applies equally as much to male and female. Without feeling the grief and what we now term as difficult emotions, we cannot resurrect our joy and verve. Without exerting our power, taking charge, nothing changes. Entropy rules. If we do allow our power to resurface, the grief becomes a transformer, the opening of a new chapter. Disallowing and dishonoring the negative prolongs stasis. Standing firm and negotiating with it brings renewed life. Note that Ceres never sought to extract revenge. She wanted a working compromise rather than a downward cycle of endless destruction. Her eyes were subsequently on her prize and not on her pain. She wanted enough balance to restore her soul. She wanted the relationship with her offspring that reset all her inner dials. Nothing, not even death, stood in her way. Self-determination was her key. She's the deal maker. She weighed up the situation and called in Zeus as helper to broker the deal. For her, it was about value, and this is one of her key words. What do we value in ourselves and others? What relationships do we value? How much compromise do we allow around what we value? Ultimately, the message here is that nothing withstands wisdom and self-acceptance. Life and death are encompassed within it, not the other way around. She liberated not only her daughter, but her own ability to deal with change on her own terms. She enabled us to move beyond the ultimate, beyond known boundaries, and to return. By taking actions such as this, self-esteem and self-belief is enhanced. Her link to Jupiter remains strong, and where Jupiter transiting Jupiter hits the same natal degree as Ceres in our chart, in any sign or making any aspect, gains can be made, abundance can be experienced. In terms of nutrition and health, she can indicate eating disorders with strong aspects or natal positions, everything from yo-yo dieting with Uranus, compulsive eating with Jupiter, and anorexia relating to Saturn. She can show where our parents had a controlling and dominating influence, or where we are prone to do the same with our own children, issues of taking and taking over. She mediates between all dualities to provide balance. In this, she relates to Libra. Just one more little bit, and then we'll get on to Eagle's chart. As universal mother, she relates to all signs. In Earth, she denotes the whole cycle that describes sustenance, productivity, growth, harvest and abundance, as well as subsequent decay. In Air, the making of deals, working out what is possible, using our minds to solve seemingly insoluble problems. In Water, the emotions that demand attention for everything else in our lives to flow. The mothering, the depression, the appeals to divinity, the joys, the grief. If we deny this, we get stuck. In Fire, the determination to not be overcome, to achieve against all odds. Some have called Ceres the higher octave of the moon in relation to childbirth, rearing and feeding, but it is worth considering that she is both the inner child and the goddess within us. And again, I reiterate, that applies to both male and female. So that's a brief rundown of Ceres. There's a lot to her. And I'd like to, I don't know anything about Eagle. I haven't spoken with Eagle. I've not emailed Eagle, not Facebook messaged him. So I just did the chart without knowing Eagle at all. So Eagle, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm present.
So I don't know what you do in terms of career or who you are or what your history is. So please feel free to interject if I'm totally barking up the wrong path.
Yes. Okay.
Or if you want to have a further understanding of what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
Okay. Your natal chart pattern of augmented and condensed quadrants is typical of births from extreme northern and southern latitudes, with considerable interception on display. Here, Pisces and Virgo, mutable signs, and Capricorn and Cancer, cardinal signs, are harder to access and express by virtue of the interception. The angles fall in mutable signs, Sag and Gemini for ascendant-descendant axis, and fixed signs for your MC-IC axis. The challenge between the innate flexibility and being buffeted by those around us who adopt a more demanding behavioral profile, the need to compromise and make deals. So that's Ceres right there. A strong ninth house may indicate somebody involved in publishing of some type, or focused on the higher mind, or prone to travel as part of his inner growth. Here we find Sagittarius on the ascendant, ruled by Jupiter conjunct Pluto in the 8th house of death, power, other people's money, and sex. Precisely the myth, Jupiter mediates between Pluto's domain of resurrection, regeneration, and control, and then to Ceres with a strong empathetic placement conjuncting Neptune in Scorpio in your 9th house. From looking at this chart, Eagle, I got the idea you were an immensely empathetic person, and it wouldn't surprise me if you were working in some kind of end-of-life capacity or healing capacity, somewhere where a lot of empathy is required. Is that correct?
Well, that's right. I have had different roles in my life. I'm working now basically with helping people to get jobs. And I'm also translating from Polish to Norwegian. I knew a few languages. Yeah. And I'm helping really people who are without work and to make them find a way in their life, yes.
That's very serious because she does control, she does have dominion over the periods of unemployment and when things are not shifting. The times when it feels stuck and the abundance is hard to access. So that's very much a Pluto Ceres theme. You really living that large. Yeah. And in your chart, she's almost exactly opposite her discovery position in Taurus. So she's in Scorpio 24 degrees, and at the discovery chart, she was yours Scorpio 24. She was discovered in Taurus 23, yeah. The 8th and the 9th houses together describe our conscious direction of power, how we do that. These are very active houses in your chart and provide something of a life theme. You feel powerful in many areas of endeavor, yet you have to contend with Saturn falling at the far midpoint between the Sun and Mercury, challenging your natal promise of Spica on the near midpoint of these two bodies. So restrictions despite apparent plenty. And hazarding a guess, you've been through some kind of experience of being bullied probably and coerced with Saturn in Aries. And that's been highlighted recently by the recent transit of Uranus, which is demanding rebellion. Does that ring true for you?
It's absolutely true. True, yes, that's right. And it's, say, last 15 years. And it has been connected to family, marriage, and children, as a matter of fact.
Right.
So I have been really fighting for, for my family and for my children.
Yes.
This has been my challenge the last years. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so again, it's your conscious direction of power. You decided, I'm not going to put up with that. So it's about, the Ceres energy is, well, what am I going to do about this really difficult situation? This is awful. So she certainly, when it's around children, she's very protective of children, would bring them back from the brink. And I would imagine you have some kind of almost parental feeling about the people you're helping as well to find jobs. I would imagine that you feel very, very protective towards them. Is that right?
Well, that could be. I really don't reflect so much on that. I relate the same way to all people I meet. So, well, possibly you can say so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I also looked at the declinations. So the Sun is contra-parallel Saturn in your declinations. So there are themes of some difficulties with authority figures. So that's
right.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Yes. Concrete and positive, harmonious of expression of one's needs and self-determination form a life curriculum, especially looking at the opposition between Chiron and Uranus at cardinal points and the world point of 0 degrees Aries. Otherwise, we play out our dissatisfaction in ways that work against us and which impinge on others' lives. So there's a positive way to deal with the opposition between Uranus and Chiron for you. And, what I felt was, working out what your needs are and what you're going to do with those needs, how you're going to get those needs met, not just for yourself. It sounds like you're doing that for a lot of other people as well. That bit might be a little bit too personal, so I'll gloss over that. Yeah, if this pattern is played well, the capacity for helping others through difficulties is potentized. So that's very relevant with what you're doing now. With the ruler of second house found in your 8th house, the possible indication of an inheritance, which brings with it balancing the relationship with the benefactor. Sometimes this could have gone awry into patterns of manipulation. Does that ring true for you, Egil?
Could you please repeat that?
Yes. The ruler of your second house is found in your 8th house, which is the house of other people's money, sex, death, inheritances, all of that sort of thing. So I've written here that that ruler of the second found in your 8th is a possible indication of an inheritance, which brings with it also the need to balance the relationship with the person from whom you would inherit. Sometimes this could have been gone into patterns of manipulation. That's the pattern that's showing here.
Well, as a matter of fact, I have. I think about my relation to my parents in this way, and I actually have had kind of decision if I should be independent, and that means to actually say that I'm taking care of myself, and or if I should kind of say make compromises, and And sometimes you make compromises, but sometimes you have to stand on what you mean and what you are standing for, and that may also cost.
Yes, absolutely. So it's that balance that is shown here in your chart. Totally correct, yes. Because sometimes people do use the knowledge that you're going to inherit from them as a little bit of manipulation. Sure, your parents are lovely people, but there is that dynamic that, I mean, I've seen that myself in my own. Anyway, moving on to your progress chart, your ascendant has moved into Capricorn, squares your chart ruler Saturn in Aries and Mars in Libra, forming a tense T-square. Venus is found on your ascendant in the 12th. Ceres is enshrined to Saturn from your 9th house, now in Sagittarius, forming a quintile 72-degree aspect to Jupiter and Uranus conjunct, located in Libra. It looks like the chart is helping Eagle to understand what his childhood needs for nurturing were, whether or not they were properly met, how this has reverberated in adult daily life, and how to find stability within self and negotiate with others to achieve a fair balance of giving and receiving that nurturing on all levels, intimate and practical. With Venus forming the aforementioned T-square, it might at times feel as if it's all getting a little bit out of hand. Pluto in quincunx to progressed Moon might sometimes be giving the feeling that it's so desperate his inner life, his personal, self, depends upon it. It could also read out that Eagle is utilizing his need to nurture others, and as I wrote here, perhaps in an end-of-life situation. So definitely felt that vibe of you helping others. Yeah. Add to that the transit of Pluto over the midheaven, Venus and ascendant over the last few years, as well as the IC and descendant falling in Cancer, and the intensity felt over this theme is clear. What was part of an interception is now highlighted by angles. Things have clarified over the years and brought more into awareness of how unaccessed emotional issues play out in our day-to-day lives. As Eagle approaches his Chiron return, the imperative to finalize his conclusions on these areas may become more apparent to him. He himself wants freedom, Ceres in Sagittarius, first house, as well as stability, giving and receiving of love, resolution of financial matters with Saturn in the 2nd, Mars, Uranus, Jupiter, Pluto in the 8th, and Ceres calls from the progressed 9th, natal first house, to broker the deal within himself. With what would he be satisfied? Must it be all or nothing? With his developed understanding, where are the acceptable lines for compromise? And then looking onto your solar arc chart, Eagle, the solar arc ascendant-descendant axis will be moving into fixed signs, Aquarius and Leo, over the next year as Eagle approaches his natal Chiron return. Shortly, transiting nodes of the moon will also be highlighting these two signs and raising questions of how Eagle's inner development fits within his own individual identity and larger groups of which he may be part, how you balance the two. Solar arc Ceres Neptune conjunction is now in earthy, stable Capricorn. It's being sextiled by transiting Neptune from Pisces, giving the spiritual context for your inner self-examination, which appears to be reaching a point of solidity of understanding. Ceres' goal of actualizing his desires is probably well underway to achievement, and now larger issues of context apply, in the same way that Ceres' personal states affected the whole world. Just another little paragraph, and then we're open for questions or chatting. As solar arc moon moves into 0 degrees Cancer in about 2.5 years, activating your natal Chiron point of 0 degrees Aries, I would imagine that some kind of work that connects it with others in other lands may well be in the offing. Well, you mentioned that already, with your work with languages. I think that will increase. That will definitely be accentuated. This will also square natal Uranus. So another round of relationship